Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined again by my editor, Jim Aiello. He is back. We had to sub in Zach Kiefer last week, but for the real stuff, for the nitty gritty, we got the one
Yeah.
and only Jim Aiello.
What does
How you
Zach?
doing?
What does Zach know? He's not as plugged in and as me. And yeah,
You
neither
know how it
older too.
goes.
All these subs you get. Come on, man.
I
These are
swear,
yeah.
in Zach's case, he only comes around when things are good. I didn't see him very often last year or the year before that, but no, he was
I just feel
great.
bad for the listeners, man. They're not getting good intel from these guys. So yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
now we got, the Shaq and Kobe, dynamic going on again. I'll take the
I
Kobe
love it.
role. You're a Shaq. You're the Finals MVP. And
I like it.
along those lines, you're talking about stars right there with those two. The Colts will face a superstar this week, and
Hmm.
perhaps their biggest game of the season. Jim, the Colts go to Arrowhead to try to hand the Chiefs their third straight loss. Fun fact: Patrick Mahomes has never lost three straight games in his career as a starter in Kansas City. So
It
let's start there.
it feels like yeah. It feels like a month. They're 5-5. Like they're on the playoff fringes right now. If you look at the current standings, they are currently in ninth. They're tied with the Texans and Ravens at 5-5, but they lost the tiebreaker to the Texans. So they're fighting. They're fighting for their playoff lives, which is insane to say about the Chiefs. It's still I still can't help myself and feel like in 2 months in late January, we're going to be talking about the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game because that's just the Chiefs. I feel like it's inevitable still. I think it's hard to shake that feeling since they've been there so many times. But where this is relevant to the Colts is that they're the desperate team, the Chiefs. They're the ones playing for everything right now because if they lose again, it's going to get so hard to climb back into this playoff fight. Not to say the Colts don't have stakes. They, as you mentioned in your story this week, and was wise to point out, they're now a game back in the win column, at least, of the Broncos and Patriots for the number one seed in the AFC and a bye week in week one, which, if you don't think that's a huge deal, you're wrong. It's a massive deal. So that is something that the Colts are obviously fighting for. But it, in terms of just like the matchup of who's got more at stake in this game, it definitely feels like the Chiefs because and again, like that's a rough place to be if you're the Colts. If they can go and beat a Chiefs team that's never lost three games in a row in the Patrick Mahomes era, that needs this win more than pretty much any other team in the AFC at this point, maybe the Ravens, but that would be I think a marquee victory for the Colts this year, even if the Chiefs aren't the best team that they were before.
So here's a debate that I'm having with myself,
Hmm.
Jim. So, and shout out to Kevin Bowen for throwing this out there on 1075 The Fan. Obviously, they have a lot of division games left. You still got to face Houston twice. You got to face Jacksonville
Mm.
twice. But would it be bigger for you from a psychological standpoint to knock off the Chiefs? I get that if you had to pick between wins, you're probably going to pick the division win over
It's it's more
the.
important for the playoffs. Yes, yes,
But like, boy, I just wonder
agree.
for a team that's trying to turn the page, you're trying to be the new contender, knocking off the old guard. And I feel like it's always hard to get rid of those guys. It's always hard to
Yeah.
vanquish, those past demons. So is this something? I get that the Colts have had success against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. They're undefeated against him in the regular season. All of that matters. But I think in this context, this game, it's not a playoff game, but it has that sort of feel, I think, going into it where you have a chance to go out there and prove not to the national media and the pundits, that's cool, that's all fine and dandy, but to yourselves that we are a new Colts team. I think you've done it so far this year.
Uh huh.
Every box they sort of checked, but this is a test, especially the rest of the way. I mean, if you look at it right now, I want to say the teams remaining on the Colts schedule, all of them are at least 500 and above. So like the cupcake games, if you want to call it that, are out of the way.
Yep.
This is a test for you to kind of say, no, we're for real. And that's the question the Colts have had to answer all year. And I get that it's annoying to a degree to kind of have to prove yourself or prove your worth or you're from formidable, status, whatever. But that's a real conversation. And I think for a locker room that hasn't won many of these big games in recent years, this could go a long way towards you stepping into what you're trying to accomplish later this year.
I love that question. It's a very fun question. I mean, the fact that you said it, I was like, okay, I think if I'm Jim Irsay, if I'm channeling the ghost of Jim Irsay and the Colts, like I think he would tell you beat the Chiefs, knock off the champs. I mean, the AFC champs, right? But knock off the best team, and that's going to give you the biggest confidence boost. But like the analytical nerd in me is pulling up our NFL playoff simulator and going, okay,
No.
which game has the biggest chances to affect their odds on winning the division? And that, according to Austin Mock and the NFL playoff simulator that we have at the Athletic, which you guys should all go check out because it's a lot of fun. He has that as the 3 weeks from now, week 14, against the Jaguars as the biggest impact on their division odds. So I would say that's the game you have to win. So it's, but when you say Jaguars or Chiefs, like, how do you not pick the Chiefs? Like, how do you not pick that game? And you're right. I think it's, first of all, it's now. So that helps. It's like, it's the thing that's right in front of you. Second of all, they are the reigning AFC champ. They're the Titans of the. Oh, that's a bad choice to use. That's a bad choice of words to use. They're the kings of
I was gonna
the
say the
NFL,
Sacramento
right?
Kings ain't too great either, so we might just have to stick with Titans and Kings and just take our
They're the
L.
best. We'll just say they're the best. They're the team that everybody wants to knock off. They're the measuring stick for everybody. So I think you're right. I think the what it does for you, even if you're like if they win, you're essentially talking about beating a sub 500 team. I don't think that matters. I think, like you said, confidence wise, what it does for you is says we can beat anybody in the AFC and we are true AFC contenders. Which you said they've made that point a couple of times this year. Like if you look at the top of the standings right now, the teams that they've played some really close games with and beat the Broncos. That's the team sitting atop the AFC right now. And I think that arguably the best team in the NFC, you could say the Eagles or the Rams, but they played the Rams and they should have won that game, as we all know, or could have won that game. So to me, they've already proven they can hang with the best in the NFL, but this would just be another kind of feather in the cap and a good confidence boost coming out of the bye.
Absolutely, and I think going on the road adds to the stakes a little bit because
Yep.
it's us against the world sort of mentality. That's sort of cliche, but also I lean towards if you want to be the best team in your conference, you got to go take out the head of the snake, and that is the Chiefs.
That's it.
And what's crazy is going through some of the numbers and talking to Nate Taylor of ESPN, used to work for us. He now covers the Chiefs
Mm.
for ESPN. That turncoat, which I say as a joke. He's a great dude. I can't even say it with a straight
Yeah, he's the
face. I
best.
couldn't even get it out
Well, I'd
without
say
stuttering.
former Indy star
Yeah,
for
former
all of
Indy
us. Yeah.
star guy, colleague
Yeah.
for all of us. He
Yeah.
basically broke down, and he's done it. Our guy here at the Athletic, Jesse Newell's done it as
Mm.
well. A lot of the advanced numbers would suggest that the Chiefs are better than they were last year. But unlike last year, where they won every single digit game, one possession game, it seemed like this year they're just not doing that. All five of their losses are by one possession. That's not a Chiefs stat. That's not something that we usually say about this team,
No.
which
Yeah.
leads me to believe that, again, if you trust that this Colts offense can go out there and put up points, and to give the Chiefs some credit, I believe they have a top five scoring defense right now. They're, I believe, number one. They're tied for number one in the fewest passing touchdowns allowed this season. So that's something to keep in mind. Does that lean you more towards Jonathan Taylor going off? He's done that a bit this season, just a little bit. But all of that in mind, is this a team that if you put them in a situation where you have to be more disciplined, you have to execute, will they falter? Will you have the upper hand? And that's not often what we say about Chiefs teams. And that's something that has really piqued my interest this week because for the teams that are usually on top in this league, they're better on the margins. And the Chiefs,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, just haven't been better on the margins. And I wonder if it comes down to it, will that be the difference out there at Arrowhead?
It could be. It's weird. It's like it said. It definitely feels like it's not the Chiefs'
But then I'm
year
like, they
for
have Patrick
whatever reason.
Mahomes, they got Travis Kelce, they got Chris Jones, they got
I
Rasheed
know.
Rice, who's been playing pretty good this year. Like, they have dudes.
I
They
know.
have Andy Reid. He's got to figure it out, right? Like, his teams get better as seasons go on.
They almost always do. I've been looking at places that have been writing about Andy Reid's lost his fastball and Travis Kelsey's a step too old and they don't have enough. They don't have enough. Like the running game is too weak, which, I mean, it's not, they have weaknesses. Don't get me wrong. But I believe if I pull this up, they're third in the NFL in points scored right now, or at least points per game. They're still being effective. Like it's
No,
not,
it's
not like,
mind-boggling.
I'm not third. I'm sorry. They are 11th in total points. I have to look at where they are. Oh, but they've only played 10 games. So anyway, yeah, points per game. But yeah, I'm with you. I think they're the Michael Myers, like he's not dead until there's like 12 stakes in him and I see
That's
the
what I'm
body
saying.
burning, and even then I'm like, oh, they're not dead. They're not dead. So like I'm not counting them out. I think this is a monster game for them. And yeah, like I think ideally and again, Steve Spagnuolo, the legendary at this point defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, like I think any team looks at the Colts, looks at what they have at quarterback, looks at what they have at running back, and says, I'm going to make Daniel Jones beat me. That's my guess. That's what I guess. That's my guess for what he's going to do. And so this is going to be not only a test for the Colts as a team, obviously, can they beat a team like the Chiefs? But I suspect this is going to be a game where Jonathan Taylor is maybe a little bit more limited, just because I think Steve Spagnuolo is one of the best like one game planners there is in the
Yes.
NFL. And I think he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that it's not Jonathan Taylor who beats him on the ground, because that's the way Shane Steichen wants it. That's the way the Colts want it. Just make it easy. Jonathan Taylor beats you on the ground. I think he's going to make Daniel Jones do it. So this is a good maybe to segue into the Daniel Jones thing. Like coming off the bye, uh, two rough games in a row, I would say. How you feeling about Daniel Jones, and what can he prove to you in this game against the Chiefs? If that's, I mean, maybe that's the way this story, the game flow goes, is that it ends up being a Daniel Jones like needs to win it for us game.
I will say, and I've talked about this a little bit with you and others throughout the bye after the Berlin game, for as shaky as they looked at times against Atlanta, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
just throw the Pittsburgh game out because that was an anomaly. It's like, well, if you're gonna have a stinker, boy, did they stink it up all in one big pile of poop in that game, right? 5 turnovers for Daniel Jones, 6 for the team. That's like crazy. I don't think that's gonna happen the rest of the year. It probably won't, because those 6 turnovers I think was a franchise record. Where the Berlin game comes into play is, yes, I understand Daniel Jones had 2 turnovers. He also was under siege a lot more than usual, but he came through in the big moment as well. So I trust him from the standpoint of, this dude has proven to me he's not Daniel Jones of the New York Giants, where he's skittish and scared. There's moments where I'm like, he probably could have got rid of that a little bit sooner. There's other moments where I'm like, he had no time to get rid of it because you got to block for the guy. But all of that in mind, I think this team can really rally around Daniel Jones in these moments, because if you give him and Shane Steichen an extra week to prepare, I just think that they're going to find some sort of answer. Now, it starts up front. Your offensive line has to be much better. I think obviously the 12 sacks over the last 2 games versus 9 through the first 8. We've said that stat many, many times. That is alarming. You want to get that number down, especially against a
Yeah,
guy like, you don't want Chris Jones in your backfield all day wreaking
can't let him beat you.
havoc.
Yep.
But assuming your offensive line can get back to its baseline of, and again, I'm not asking for perfection here. If they only give up 2 sacks and a couple of QB hits and a couple of QB hurries, that's fine. Like I said, the Chiefs have a pretty formidable defense
Yep.
in the league this year. My thing is, can Daniel uphold his end of the bargain? I think he's done it so far this year, to continue to make plays through the air. Because as much as I've looked at his career this year, and I've criticized the last couple of games, and I think everyone has. Anytime you have 7 turnovers in 2 games as a quarterback, you're going to get criticized.
Yeah.
But, and this kind of teases what we're going to get into later in the podcast, and I've already written about, but like, his passer rating is 101.6 for the season. If
Yeah.
that were for the entire year, that'd be the 4th highest mark in franchise history. So I can
It's crazy.
criticize the guy. I can say, boy, he could be a lot better here and there. Dang, how much better am I asking for? And at this point, it just feels like you're asking him to maybe not turn the ball over as much, have better protection up front, which isn't on him. Again, that's on the offensive line. And I will have a piece coming out very soon on the turnovers, have the Colts been figured out, all those things. Just stay tuned for that. But for me, Jim, I think this is an answer, an opportunity, not for the team, not only for the team, but for Daniel Jones to say, I'm a different quarterback. That guy you saw with the Giants, who either didn't have any success, or when he had success, he was running a lot. I'm not that dude. I can hang in the pocket. I don't need to scramble. I mean, he can scramble. He's done that at a higher rate, but I don't need design runs. I don't need a gimmicky offense. Line it up, and I'll show you what I can do. So, how do you feel about that mindset? And if I mean, he'll never say it, but do you think he carries any of that into this game? Like, here's an opportunity for me to put my stamp on my new chapter of my career.
It's hard to say because he's such an even keel, like calm, cool, collected guy that you feel like he blocks out a lot of that outside stuff. Like he treats every game like it's just the next game and all that,
I
all
do
those
think
cliches.
he's truer with that cliche than other
Agree.
players. I will give him
Agree.
that.
Agree. No, I'm with you. I definitely. But then I wonder. Again, I've watched him so much with the Giants, and you see like the negative games, they kind of like stack up on him. Like, and so you do wonder if there's some pressing, or if he's overthinking and overdoing it. Because part of the reason, like you talk about the protection being an issue with the sacks, and it has been. But like part of the reason I think you take that many sacks is because you're holding onto the ball too long, and you're overthinking things, and maybe not trusting what you're seeing, just trusting the things that that you saw early in the year. Teams, defenses are obviously adjusting, and again, James is going to get into all of that stuff with a cool story later this week. But I just, I do think there has to be some human part of him that's like, I'm going to prove people wrong that these two games are just a blip on the radar. Everybody, even in MVP seasons, people have run one or two bad games. Though I will say, like, if I'm Chris Ballard and this is hypothetical, and I engaged in contract extension talks with him, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, hey, hold on. wait, let me just wait one more second just to make sure before I commit anything to this guy. Like, he doesn't turn totally back into a pumpkin, and this is like, we don't get Giants. Again, we've talked about this on this podcast. Like, this so far has been it's like eerily similar to what 2022 Giants were, which was hot start with make the playoffs. They win a playoff game, but they had a real rough finish down the stretch, and the Giants still extend him, and it ends up being a huge mistake. Like right now, we're on like steps 1.5 of that. Really good start, maybe not a good start in the second. And so again, it's hard for me not to see history repeating itself and being skeptical of the situation. So I'm trying to distance myself because that's not fair to Daniel Jones or the Colts. It's a different situation. I think they're a better team. All that stuff. I want to get back to your question though, is like, I bring all this up because Daniel Jones doesn't just know about this. He lived all of this. He experienced all of this. Like, he has been here before where he got close and he did get the contract extension with the team that drafted him. It seemed like the dream come true, and then it all kind of faded. So now I'm wondering, how does that not seep into your brain a little bit, right? Like in a situation like this is the chance I get to prove myself, and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. I don't know, man. I'm still I've eaten the crow, right? It's already happened, but I am curious to see how he responds after two games of. And again, here, can I ask you this? What's with the fumbles? Like, there's 6 fumbles the last couple of games, and not you didn't lose them all.
I believe
he's caught the ball
tied.
6 times. Yeah,
I believe he's tied for the league high. If I'm not mistaken, Jim. I think it's 8. I think he's tied with
8.
Cam Ward and somebody else
like
for the most. And that's probably more alarming to me than it is for the other stuff. And what's weird about it is, Jim, I looked it up actually where we're talking.
Yeah.
His time to throw against the Falcons and against Pittsburgh was actually lower than it was in the previous weeks. I think I want to say it was like 2.65, 2.68, something like that, where in the previous weeks where he was airing it out and doing all these things, it was about 2.8. Now, granted, some of that is variation. You can look at what throws that again, I will break it all down on film. It's like, okay, well, on this particular play, it clearly wasn't 2 point whatever seconds, but overall, it's not like he's holding the ball a ton. But I do think that there is a little bit of old habits maybe creeping in where you just got to be more secure at the ball. You got to keep 2 hands on it. I get that you want to make a play down the field, and he knows this. And even Shane, who wouldn't really go there as far as why we've seen kind of an uptick in turnovers, or uptick in some of the offensive line issues. The one thing he did say about Daniel and on his part was he knows he's got to take care of the football. He knows we can't have it where he's in the pocket without having 2 hands on it. So that should be an easy fix. The rest of it, though, I do wonder, like to your point, psychologically, does that creep in? And if in it, and then to Daniel's credit, if there is somebody to bounce back from it, I think it's him. I mean, he dealt with the weight of the world, it felt like, with the Giants, right? I mean, our market is, I pride myself on being a big capital J journalist and asking the tough questions, but I'm not New York radio here, and I don't have 26 cameras in your face after a game, so there's some give and take there, I think, with how he'll approach it.
I agree. I guess I'm open to it. Like I said, I'm more open to the Daniel Jones being a different quarterback than I was at the beginning of the season. So again, it was a big test. It's a huge game for them coming off the bye. The bye came at a great time for him. I think it's like the perfect reset time for him and the offense. Like, The other thing that should help is that Steichen will had a chance, I should say, to do a deep dive into
Yes.
what defenses are doing to adjust to what he did through the first half of the season, and that should be hugely helpful. I mean, everybody always talks about like Andy Reid out of the bye, and they weren't that great out of the bye the last time, but he's always been so good out of the bye. He always kind of changes things up. He has great game plan for that, and I think Steichen has an opportunity to prove himself a little bit, being like, okay, like we have some new things we can do. We're going to show you some stuff we haven't shown before. We're going to adjust to what defenses are doing to us, and again, like we were talking about Jonathan Taylor in this game. The Chiefs are not an awesome run defense. They're like middle of the pack in terms of defensive success rate against the run. So they can be run on. They can be had. And I think it'll be on Steichen to make sure that works and to give Jonathan Taylor the opportunity. And as you mentioned in your story this week, like healthy offensive line, right? So like good offensive line and 2 weeks to prepare. Like this no excuses, right? They should be ready to go for this game.
Absolutely. And that'll help me segue into the latter part of this podcast, which I want to pivot to the defense. And one of the other numbers that stood out to me, and I want to encourage you all to go check out the story. Just a fun little exercise. Like, hey, here's 5 numbers that tell the story of the Colts this season. And for those listening to the podcast, you get spoon-fed a little bit of this information here. So one of the numbers that stands out to me is 22.7, which is the blitz rate that the Colts have this year. That is, I believe, 15th in the league, middle of the pack, last time I checked, which, again, that is still a big difference between last year when they were 30th and sure. I believe maybe 17.5%. They barely blitzed with Gus Bradley. That has changed with Lou Anarumo. But here's where it gets interesting for me this week. I'm going to assume that Charvarius Ward is back this week. All-pro cornerback a couple years ago for the 49ers, got paid. He was your big free agent signing and your most lucrative free agent signing this past offseason. Let's say he's back in the lineup. You pair him up with Sauce Gardner and you're going up against the Chiefs.
I love where you're going with this.
But at the same time, DeForest Buckner is not in there. He's out with a neck injury. So,
oh yeah. I see where you're going.
How does that blitz rate look? How does your pressure look? How does all that feel when you don't have DeForest Buckner in there? And do you perhaps blitz more because you trust your back end more? I don't know. I don't know if you feel like you need to bring a few extras because you don't have that one guy in the middle who can win by himself. So how do you feel about that dynamic? And again, I'm making an assumption here. We should find out here in a couple of hours from Shane Steichen. Hey, will Charvarius Ward practice this week? My assumption, my feeling is that he probably will, just because he's been out for a while. He's been champing at the bit. As I've talked to you all before, he's been out at practice with his helmet, in his hand. He's, done work off to the side by himself. He was over in Berlin. I was thinking to myself, and to give you all some more context and some visuals, Jim, over in Berlin, I had more field access than I've ever had here in America. So maybe, NFL, help your boy out. But where I was standing, where I was standing pregame, I got to see everyone come out the tunnel. And if you didn't know anything about the Colts, anything about their injury issues, you would have thought Charvarius Ward was going to play in that game because he ran out, cleats, gloves, warm up, a little bit of sweat on him, looking like everyone else. And you could tell that dude looks like he's ready to play. So all of that in mind, Jim, how do you think this defense can approach the Chiefs offense, assuming you have Charvarius Ward back, but you also have a big absence in DeForest Buckner?
You've talked me into this. I was going to look and see what Patrick Mahomes' success rate is against man versus zone. I know it's, again, that feels like the Athletic Football Show podcast type of thing. I'm sure they'll bring that up sometime. They're the ones who dive deep into the stats, but if I can find it later, I'll let you know. But I just on base level, I love where your head's at. Like I think if you have Charvarius Ward and you trust him, especially against a guy like Rashee Rice, I mean Sauce Gardner's big enough too, but if you don't, and both of them can travel, like that's one of the coolest parts about this. I think Ted Nguyen pointed this out when the trade went down, is that like the Colts have the rare thing where they have 2 cornerbacks that they don't mind sending to travel with the best receiver. Because I bring that up because Rashee Rice is not like exclusively an outside receiver. The Chiefs will quote unquote hide him in the slot sometimes, where he will be Kenny Moore is obviously good and goes up against bigger guys than him all the time, but Rashee Rice is a big dude. So like you could play the matchup game if you want with Charvarius Ward or Sauce Gardner going up against a big guy like Rashee Rice and try to take him away with one of your best corners. I kind of love that idea. And then using the other one to try to take away, I don't know, a guy like Xavier Worthy, or I mean, they have other options, Travis Kelce, that kind of thing. So it's not like they're limited to just the one. But to your point, without DeForest Buckner, it feels very Lou Anarumo to me to be like, okay, I have the horses now in the back end. I'm gonna let them go man to man, take away those guys' weapons, and I'm gonna come after Patrick Mahomes. I'm not gonna let him sit in the pocket and beat us. Which again, obviously, there's maybe nobody better in the NFL than creating outside of the pocket than Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think you also want him sitting in his spot and chucking it deep. So like you saw, Patrick Mahomes' deep ball numbers are not great this year.
No.
And he's throwing a lot of one-on-one contested balls because that's what I think he's seeing. He's getting one-on-one matchups. And he's throwing deep downfield and hoping his guys can go win. And they haven't very often for him. So that might be, again, if you can force Patrick Mahomes into quick decisions, man-to-man, take a deep shot down the field when you have Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward back there, I think you got to like your odds. And again, you've really talked me into this. I feel like this is the kind of game that Lou Anarumo has wanted to play. Like, I think that's probably what Lou Anarumo was thinking when Chris Ballard said, hey, if I trade for Sauce Gardner, what's that going to do for you? And I think what we're going to see on Sunday is exactly what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, it was funny to see his little smirk when we were talking to him yesterday, Jim.
Yeah.
Like, what's your reaction to Sauce Gardner? And he's probably thinking, hell yeah, bring him here. And he talked about the versatility, obviously the high IQ. He mentioned that Sauce really didn't make any sort of coverage mistakes when he was over in Berlin. I know everyone kind of got on him, me included, about slipping and kind of getting had with Drake London. And for those who got on my nerves all weekend about that, he lost the rep. I don't care if you slip, trip, whatever. He lost the rep. He even said that. So people who say that about sports, that to me is kind of like, you're not a real competitor. You can't say that. Oh, he slipped. Who cares?
Sauce would say that. I got to be honest. Sauce would say it.
Exactly. So he didn't win that rep, but he won, the other, 50 plus snaps he played. So I think he is someone, Charvarius Ward, that is, being paired with Sauce Gardner. Both of those guys can feel like they can play off each other. And Sauce didn't shy away from it. He said, look, man, this is a guy who's a dog. He's someone I hope to put on a clinic with, is what the word he used was, a clinic. And I think they could do that. And I get that Charvarius Ward hasn't played in a number of weeks. He's kind of had a weird season. And I definitely want to actually send some condolences to him. He posted the other day about the anniversary of, I believe, the death of his daughter, or either her birthday. And he mentioned, how hard it was. He was posting some pretty dark messages on social media just about how hard it is to lose her. So I get he has a lot going on from personal standpoint. The loss of a child, you can never get over that, obviously. No. But then the injuries, the concussions, stuff like that. But make no mistake about it, when I was talking to Lou Anarumo, I was like, hey, by the way, you've talked to this guy. What do you get his sense? And he was like, oh, he absolutely can't wait to get back out there. He can't wait to play. And so, again, I don't think you can replace DeForest Buckner, but I would feel a lot better about trying to do that if I know my back end has been upgraded with a guy like Charvarius Ward. And keep in mind, I was going through some of the numbers. Jim went down a rabbit hole, and I put it in a story earlier this week. And again, go check it out. Kind of some numbers to look at for the Colts, and I could go a few other numbers as well that I just didn't include because I was like, man, this story is going to be like 3,000 words if I can include every single number that I find interesting. But one of them, and it was tied to another, Sauce Gardner has 2 first team All-Pro selections. Yep. That is more than every other Colts cornerback combined over the last 50 years. Charvarius Ward was a second-team All-Pro in 2023. He has, I believe, the most pass deflections in a single season in 49ers history. And they had guys like, I want to say, did Deion Sanders play there? And Ronnie Lott and other like great, defensive players. So he's a top-tier guy. You have Kenny Moore II, who was a Pro Bowler. So they have as loaded a cornerback trio as you can possibly have going up against the quarterback that, it feels like annually we're asking, can he be the GOAT? Can he chase down Tom Brady? So that to me is a good sort of problem to have, is the reintegration of Charvarius Ward, assuming he's back out there. So I'm very excited about this matchup because I think this is something where you get the extra juices flowing. And let's not forget I'll be remiss if I didn't mention this, Jim. And I'm hoping to ask him about it this week, and I'll take one for the team. I know it'll be, drama-filled, whatever. But there might be some blood there too, some bad blood, because Zaire Franklin, one of the best leaders the Colts have on the team, he did say that he agreed with Brian Branch, who got into it with Juju Smith-Schuster a few weeks ago, and I think he might have punched him after a game, got suspended, and Zaire went on his podcast and said, "Hey, well, I believe he deserves to have his ass beat. I don't like him. And talked about how he was, you let this guy punk you in front of your kids. I don't know if Juju Smith-Schuster even has any kids, but the point is, there is some bulletin board material out there. There's some bad blood. You've kind of had their number in the regular season. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes beat you in the postseason when it matters the most, but all of that, I think, can create a very good environment. And I'm excited to experience my first road game at Arrowhead because everyone tells me it's kind of like a college environment where it gets really, really loud.
That's what I actually did see a night game at Arrowhead. It was one of the best games, probably the peak of the Matt Eberflus defensive coordinator era for the Colts, where they ended up holding the Chiefs. I think it was to like under 10 points the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era. It was an incredible game. And funny enough, to connect to kind of your theory about the way Lou Anarumo was going to play this week, they played a ton of man. Eberflus, the king of the bend don't break zone defense, played a ton of man, and it ended up working out beautifully. And I want to say, by the way, because while we were talking, I did look up the numbers just in case people were curious. So, first of all, to your theory about blitzing, when blitzed, Patrick Mahomes right now has a negative EPA per dropback. He is 26th in the NFL at negative .02. And then, more interestingly, he is the number one rated quarterback against zone defenses. And he's like, I dropped the poll over, but he's 27th in against man. So, man defense, blitzing, seems like the book. Seems like the way you want to play. Yeah, 27th, .18 EPA. He's not terrible against man, but like to compare, Drake May is at .59 EPA, which is insane right now. Tua is at .57 EPA against man. Patrick Mahomes is only at .18. That's 27th in the NFL, and they said he is dead last among qualified quarterbacks. Dead first against qualified quarterbacks against zone. So blitzing him, playing man to man, feels like the way you want to beat Patrick Mahomes. I think your theory is dead on. I think we might see a lot of man, a lot of blitz this week.
You figured it out. You have slayed the dragon. You need to be hired as a defensive coordinator immediately to knock off Patrick Mahomes.
To your point, though, I mean, like if the numbers tell you what it takes, and then you have the horses that can actually execute that game plan, like not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody can blitz and get to Patrick Mahomes. Not everybody can blitz and cover the way that the Colts potentially can with these cornerbacks. Like I do think that if these corners are healthy and playing at their peak, like yeah. That's the blueprint. Like that's how you beat Patrick Mahomes. So I'm excited to see. Now you pumped me up now. Like I love your theory and now the stats back it up. Like this is perfect. And now I really want to see it this week.
Exactly. So that's all we have for you on this edition of the show. A big matchup. It's not flexing to prime time. Thank the heavens. As I tell you all the time, 107.5 The Fan. I'll say it again here. Football should be played at 1 p.m. in the NFL as God intended. And as the deadline lords intended as well. I'm sure you appreciate, me filing at about 8:30 versus, 2 a.m. or something like that. So
way better. I'm a much better editor at 7 o'clock than I am at 2 a.m. That's for sure.
Exactly. So no flex game, but still a very big game for this Colts team. I'll be on the road in Kansas City. I'll be on boots on the ground, bring you all the coverage, all of the analysis, the reactions, and things like that. And we'll see where the Colts are from an injury standpoint, because the last thing I'll mention is, in addition to the potential return of Charvarius Ward, Anthony Richardson Sr. is technically eligible to come off IR this week. I know Samson Ebukam and Tyquan Lewis have missed the last couple of games. Anthony Gould, somebody else who's missed some games, the top punt returner for the Colts. So will those guys be back and ready to go after the bye? So, again, this doesn't get much better than this. I feel like this is what you asked for. And again, look at it like this, Colts fans. If you came into this season saying one team in this matchup was going to be competing for the number one seed at this point in the year, and the other team was going to be trying to get into the playoffs, I don't know how many would have chose that, the latter would be the Chiefs and the former would be the Colts. So that's how crazy the season has been. Weird. And perhaps it'll get crazier over at Arrowhead, Jim. What do you think?
It's funny. Like, old is new again, right? Like we're like the kind of the new wave, if you want to call them that. The Ravens, the Chiefs. Those are the Bills, the teams those are the teams sitting atop the AFC. And now, hey, look, it's the Colts and the Patriots from back when we were all kids. At least I should when I was kids. So some other people listening might have not have been kids, but back from the 2000s, the Peyton Manning days, the glory days. So it's funny. It's funny to see that again.
Yes, and so, again, I've tried to end this like 3 times, but I keep yapping about this game. I'm so excited about it. We will talk to you all very, very soon. Stay safe and enjoy the game if you're traveling. And if you're not, turn it on and send me some funny gifts as I do at halftime about how you're feeling midway through that one. And obviously, post-game, I'll bring you all the coverage here at The Athletic.